Welcome. This video is an introduction to the DOM and how to access it. It does require a basic understanding of HTML and CSS and JavaScript, so if you need, check out one of the other intro videos first on the channel. So what is the DOM? Well, it stands for Document Object Model, and it's the interface used to interact with web pages. The browser creates it based on the source code, and all of the different tags that are in there are considered nodes. And all of the text inside those tags are also nodes. Even attributes are nodes, and all of these nodes can be edited in JavaScript. So the DOM really it's an easy way that JavaScript can change what is seen on the web page. So with the DOM, the web page is represented by the word document, and that's how we're going to access the various nodes. So before we get farther into that, let's actually get started with a basic web page, and then we can go from there. So I'm going to start off with my doc type and opening up my HTML tags. Let's see. All right, we need a header, sorry, not header, a head tag. And a body tag. All right, I've got my basic tags in there. I do want to put in just a little bit of metadata. So I've got my meta tag for name, and it's going to be the author. And the content for the author should be your name. And let's go ahead and put in some keywords as well. And for the keywords, let's use HTML, tags, and CSS. I'm gonna resize this a little bit there. And for the last one, a description. So let's put that in. And our description will be accessing the DOM. All right, let's go ahead and save this fiddle. Don't want to work too much without saving. Okay, so we've got our metadata in there, got that taken care of. I'm gonna go ahead and collapse that. And in the body, not gonna have a whole lot of elements here, but do want to have a heading. And of course, I'm going with the infamous hello world. Let's go ahead and put in a horizontal rule after that. And a paragraph. Now this paragraph, all about the DOM. Okay, in addition to those three, I do want to have a unordered list with just a few list items, and that's going to wrap up our HTML here. For each of these list items, I'm just going to put item and then the number of the item. So I've got an item 1, an item 2, and an item 3. Do you want to close off my unordered list tag? I'm going to tidy up a bit here. All right, so that looks good. Now that we've got these basic tags in here, keep in mind that each of these tags represents a node. And each of the information inside, the text inside those tags, those are also nodes. Attributes that we might put about these tags are also nodes. We can access those nodes with JavaScript. So I'm going to move my JavaScript up just a little bit here. And we're going to start with document. As I said earlier, this is our way to access the DOM. And we're going to do a quick search for all of those elements through the DOM, all the different nodes, and we're going to search by tag name. So I can say get elements by tag name. So get elements by tag name. And now this is going to require an argument. I need to put a string literal, and that's the tag that I'm looking for. And let's start off looking for that h1 tag that we have. So if I put in h1, this is going to return an array of all of the h1 tags in the website. Now we know we only have one, which says hello world. However, this is returning all of them, so it does return an array. So we want to actually have something to store this, and we're going to create a variable in JavaScript, and I'm going to call that headings. And I'm using my equal sign, my assignment operator. So this is running first. It's going to get all of those elements and put it into an array, and it's going to save that array of all the h1 tags into a variable called headings. Now headings we know is only holding one thing, but it is important to know it's still array. However, I can say headings at 0, and I can do this because I know there is one heading there. And then I can actually change the inner HTML of that tag. So if I say .inner HTML, I can set that equal to something else. So right now it says hello world. I can actually put something else in there. Ooh, but wait, we didn't run yet. Right before I do that, I'm going to comment out that one line and just hit run so we can see that basic website there. Sorry, should have done that first. All right, so now we can at least see what's going on. I'm going to go ahead and uncomment this back out. And let's put in hello DOM. So right now we see hello world. But I'm going to be changing the inner HTML of this h1 tag, and I'm going to make it say hello DOM. So when I click run, you see how the website changed. Now my code is still the same here. It's the JavaScript that's actually changing at runtime. It is changing the HTML inside that h1 tag. So now this is just if we have one heading, 3 headings, 20 headings. It's going to find the first one because I put at index 0, and it's going to change it. So let's do another one that we just know is just going to have one. There is one body in there. So I'm going to say var, and I'm going to name this DOM body, and it's going to be equal to document.getElements by tag name. And I'm going to go ahead and put body in as my argument. So this is returning an array of all of the body tags. Now I know there's just one, but still it's important to know that it is an array. So when I say DOM body, I do need to put in at index 0. And this one, instead of changing the inner HTML, let's go ahead and just change an attribute. So I'm going to put in set attribute. And set attribute, I want to change the style attribute. So I put in style. Now set attribute actually takes in 2 arguments. One, the attribute you want to change, and the value you want to change it to. So here, this is where knowing CSS does come in handy, but we're going to change the style attribute, the color, and let's go ahead and set that to blue. Got an extra quote there. Okay, so I'm going to go ahead and hit run, and we see that the body tag attribute for color has changed. Everything, all the text has changed to blue. That's the font color. Now, one more that we can do. I noticed that horizontal rule there is not changing because that's not a font color. So let's go ahead and change that as well. So I'm going to say var lines, because that's what those horizontal rules are. Those are lines going across our screen. So one more time, document.getElements by tag name. And this time we're looking for the HR tag. Now that I've got that, I can say lines at 0. And this time, let's set more than one attribute at a time just to see how that works. So I'm going to call the set attribute again. But this time when I'm putting these arguments in, I'm going to put in more than one style at a time. So I'm still changing the style attribute, but I'm going to be setting multiple styles at the same time. First off, I'm going to go with the border. Most common things we're going to change here with a horizontal rule. So the border, I can actually put in multiple values at the same time. I can put in like 10 pixels for the thickness of the border. I can put in that it's solid or dashed. I can change the color. All of that can go in right in a row. But after I change the border, I can put in my semicolon and I can continue changing things right here. So I'm going to change the border radius. And that border radius, I'm going to change the size here so that's a little bit more readable. And that border radius, I'm going to go ahead and set to 10 pixels, which I typically change it to the size of the border because I think that looks better. So I'm going to change that border radius as well. Put in my semicolons and let's hit run. So as you can see, it did change the thickness of the horizontal rule. 10 pixels, it changed it to dash, changed the color, and the border radius. We have a nice curved radius there on the border, and I changed that all with the set attribute function. Okay, so this is a way that you can find elements by their tag name, but sometimes it's helpful to be a lot more specific. So like we could have a whole lot of horizontal rules, and then I'm trying to find which one I want to use with the index. Like I knew it was 0, but that could be tougher. We can be more specific in the HTML code, which makes it easier with the JavaScript. Now this, of course, is also used with CSS with formatting as well, but we've got two attributes that we can use, class and ID. And we're going to go ahead and add those into the HTML. So for the unordered list, I'm going to give that an ID of list. Okay, so for my unordered list in the HTML, I gave it an ID of list. All right, and let's see. Let's go ahead and give a class to all my list items. So I'm going to give a class to my list items, and I'm going to actually call them list items. I'm going to go ahead and copy and paste that down to my other two list items. So it's important to know that with ID, with that attribute, it has to be a unique ID for every element that you give the ID attribute to. So you can't have more than one tag sharing an ID. It has to be unique. Now with class, we can have multiple items sharing a class identification. So it's just the ID has to be unique, whereas class does not. You can have multiple things sharing. Now class works great with the CSS, where you could apply things to an entire class throughout the web page. But ID, this is very helpful with JavaScript when we're trying to find a specific element quickly and do something with it. Okay, so now that we've got those in there, let's go ahead and just put one more in here. This item 3, this list item, I'm going to give that an ID as well, and I'm going to say third. All right, so this one has an ID and a class, and it's definitely possible to have both, so that won't be a problem. Okay, let's go back down to our JavaScript. First, I'm going to hit run just so you see nothing changes over here by just adding in those attributes. Those are strictly for identification. It's not going to make a change unless we had CSS code telling that particular class to look differently. Okay, so now I'm going to be getting elements by class name. All right, so I'm going to be using the same document that I was using before, dot get elements by class name. Right, to get elements by class name. It also is going to require one string literal as an argument here. Well, technically it doesn't have to be a string literal. You can use variable, but it's going to require one argument. And I'm going to go ahead and put in list items. So this class name list items is for each, right? It's for each of those list items as we're going through. Now I'm going to go ahead and save those. So I'm going to say var items equals. So that way all of those list items are getting saved into an array. This also does return an array into the array called items. So now let's do something to them. I'm going to say items, let's go with the first one, items at index 0, and I'm going to change the inner HTML here. But let's do something different. When you're changing the inner HTML, it is actually HTML. So I can put HTML tags directly in the string literal. So I can say this, and I can put in a tag for bold. Now I'm typing the word bold. I'm going to close off that bold tag. So what I'm doing as I'm typing this in is I'm putting in inner HTML. So I'm putting in text, but I can actually put in tags inside this text to impact that. So I'm going to go ahead and hit save because I haven't done that in a while and hit run. Now we see it did change the item text, but it also took into account the bold tag. And notice the word bold is actually bold. So it's not just putting in text when you use the inner HTML, but you're actually putting in HTML code, and you can put whatever you need to put there. So now that we got that taken care of, let's go ahead and do a specific one. So the ID. So I'm going to say var, and I'm going to call it DOM list. And it's still document.get element. Ooh, it's not get elements. When we're talking about ID, there's only one specific element per ID. So it is get element by ID. And so what I put in as the argument is the specific ID of the element I'm looking for. And let's start off looking for the list. So this does not return an array. This is returning just one element that has the ID list, and that's what's going to be saved in the variable DOM list. So whenever I'm wanting to change something with this, I do not have to say at index because DOM list is a single element. So I can go directly into something like setting the attribute. And I'm going to change, let's go ahead and change the style because I want you to see how this impacts the whole list. And I'm going to change the color to green. So since this is one item, it might be surprising. When I hit run, it's changing all three of these different elements to green. Now those are each list items. However, all of those list items are inside the unordered list that I use the ID for list. So all of these elements being inside that tag, changing that one element impacts everything inside that element. So that's why they all change to green. All right, let's do one last one here, and we're going to say var third item. And that is going to be equal to document.get element singular by ID, and let's put in the third. That is our ID of that last item, and I can just say the third item dot inner HTML is equal to the last. Then when you hit run, you'll see that it does change that inner HTML to the last. Now don't forget to save, and you did it. You made it to the end of the video. Well done. But don't stop learning.